Good people, today we'll be doing the equations of the inverse where we'll be taking these functions and then doing their inverses. Now the first thing before we do the inverse that I need to highlight on you when you are doing the inverses. The first thing that you need to do, number one, you must switch x and y. So what does that mean by switching x and y? What was x going to become y, what was y is going to become x, and then after that you need to make y what the subject of the formula. That is very important after interchanging the x and y. Now let's go to our first question that we have here. They are saying f into y is equals to -3. Then from there we must find the inverse. Now let me write this equation as it is first. So they are saying we have f into y equals to -3x, and then from here we need to find the inverse of it. Now by saying finding the inverse, we need this f into this -1 that is there on top. By doing that, they are showing that now what we are going to do here is to interchange. By interchanging, meaning already doing the inverse, meaning this y is going to be x and then -3, and then this x is going to be y. Then from there we've already started to do what? To do our inverse. Then from here we need to make y the subject of the formula. How do we make y the subject of the formula? From here we're going to divide by -3, we divide by -3, and then y is going to be equals to what? It's going to be equals to x into -3, and then from here this is our inverse of the formula. I hope we understand that. And then now number 2, which is going to be y is equal to x squared. So my b is y is equals to x squared. Now we need to find the inverse of this function. So it was f into y is equal to x squared. Now finding the inverse of this function, the first thing you need to do, you interchange. So this was y, so this is going to be x, and then this was x, this is going to be y, but this x was squared, so it's going to be y squared. And then from here we need to make the y the subject of the formula. How do we make y the subject? We need to square both sides. Now by squaring both sides, it's something that is very important that you must do. This x now is going to be plus or minus this square root of x, and then from there this is my x. That is very important. X must be always greater than 0. Inside this x cannot be negative. There is no square root of a negative sign. So this x must be always greater or equals to 0. I hope you understand that part of doing our inverse. And then now C. Our C, it was y is equals to 4 all over x and then -1. Remember this was f into. Now doing our inverse now is very important. Inverse, interchange the x and y. So this is my y is going to become x and then equals to 4 is equals to y and then -1. Now remember, we need to make y the subject of our formula. How do you make y the subject of our formula here? Let's start by taking this -1 to the other side. So it's going to be x plus 1 is equals to 4 all over y. And then from here, this is over 1. So we can cross multiply here. By cross multiplying, we're gonna have y into x plus 1 into is equals to 4. Remember, we need to make y the subject of the formula. So we're gonna divide by x plus 1, then we divide by x plus 1, and then my inverse is gonna be 4 all over x plus 1. This is going to be the inverse of this function here. I hope we understand what we're doing here. Now let's go to another one. Let's go to D, which is saying f into y equals to 2x squared. But now here it's very important, they've given us the restriction that x must be greater or equals to 0, which is this is our domain of this function that we have here. So we're restricted in terms of what are we going to do here. Now doing the inverse now of this function, first thing that you must do always, we do interchange. Now interchanging, this is going to be my x, so this is going to be my x, and then this is 2, and then this y, this x is going to be x, so it's going to be y squared. Now remember, since my domain is x into x is greater or equals to 0, now I've interchanged them. So my y is very important, and it's got to also follow the same restriction that they gave me here, must be greater or less than what? Than 0. And then from here, I need to make my y the subject of the formula. How can I do that? First thing here, divide by 2, divide by 2, and then y squared is equals to x all over 2. Then from here, remember, I need to make y the subject. Y needs to be my subject of the formula. How can I do that? Now from here, I'm going to have to root both sides. I'm going to have to root both sides. And then y, it's going to be, remember now, plus or minus. If you left this thing out, everything is totally wrong. So square root of x all over 2. And then remember, they've gave us the restriction. They've gave us the restriction where they say y is greater and less than what? 0. Remember, if I write this, it has to go with the domain that already that they gave me, where they say x must be greater or less than what? Than 0. I hope you see that one. Now from here, which one that I'm going to take between positive and negative? Since my y is greater than 0, sorry about that. Since my y is greater than 0, my final inverse question, it has to be positive, where my x is x all over 2, all of them under the square root, must be must be my final inverse question, and then it's gonna say y is gonna be less than 0, and x must be also greater and less than 0. Why? Because this is why this taking the positive, because my domain, my limitation is telling me that y must be greater or less than 0. This is how we are going to find our inverse question. I'm still have to do a lot of more question in terms of finding the inverses of the function, and also doing the sketch, and also doing some domain and some range based on the inverse question. Thank you so much.